I never planned on becoming the most talked about person in Silicon Valley's biotech industry. But standing in the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel, watching my career supposedly crumble, I realized that sometimes the best victories come after your enemies think they've already won. My name is Sarah Martinez, and until last night, I was the lead research scientist at BioFuture Innovations. For 5 years, I developed groundbreaking patents in genetic modification that could revolutionize cancer treatment. But corporate greed has a way of turning success into a target on your back. I still remember my first day at BioFuture, fresh out of MIT with my PhD, eager to change the world. David Chen, my manager, seemed supportive then. "Your research proposals are brilliant, Sarah," he'd said, green-lighting my projects with enthusiasm. What I didn't realize was that he was already planning how to steal my work. The signs were subtle at first. David started insisting on being included in all patent applications as a supervising inventor. He demanded detailed documentation of every breakthrough, every innovation. "It's just standard procedure," he'd say with that practiced smile. I knew better, but I played along. After all, I had a plan of my own. My mother, a patent attorney before she passed away, had taught me one crucial lesson. In the world of intellectual property, documentation is everything. So while I gave David what he wanted, I kept separate records, time-stamped and notarized, of every discovery. I filed provisional patents under my private holding company, Martinez Biotech LLC, registered in Delaware, weeks before submitting anything to BioFuture's legal team. The real turning point came 3 months ago when our phase I trials showed unprecedented success. The cancer treatment protocol I developed was working better than anyone expected. That's when David's attitude changed. He began excluding me from key meetings, speaking to investors without me present. I knew what was coming. I'd seen it happen to others in the industry, but I was prepared. Last night's gala was supposed to be a celebration of BioFuture's 5th anniversary. The who's who of biotech were there, champagne flowing, success in the air. I wore my favorite black dress, simple but elegant, and watched David work the room. He was in his element, shaking hands, making promises. If only he knew what Monday would bring. "Your attention, please." David's voice cut through the crowd at 9:30 p.m., exactly as planned. "I have an important announcement about BioFuture's future." The room fell silent, all eyes on him as he stood on the small stage. I sipped my champagne, hiding my smile behind the glass. "As many of you know, we've made incredible strides in cancer treatment this year," he began, his practiced charm on full display. "Tonight, I'm excited to announce that our patents have been approved, and Phase A trials will begin next month." A round of applause filled the room. I noticed several venture capitalists nodding appreciatively. However, David continued, his voice taking on a regretful tone that I knew was completely fabricated. "I must also announce some organizational changes. It's come to our attention that certain employees have been taking credit for company innovations while contributing minimal original work." The room grew quiet. I felt eyes turning toward me, whispers starting. David's smile turned predatory as he looked directly at me. "Sarah Martinez, while you've been a part of our team, we've discovered that your contributions have been greatly exaggerated. The board has decided to terminate your employment, effective immediately. Security will escort you to clear out your desk." The silence was deafening. I could feel the judgment, the assumptions, the quick mental calculations as people decided whether to believe David or distance themselves from me. It was exactly what I'd expected. I stood up slowly, straightened my dress, and walked to the stage. David's smile faltered slightly. He'd expected tears, protests, maybe even a scene. Instead, I smiled warmly and extended my hand. "Congratulations on the patents, David," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet room. "I'm sure Monday's board meeting will be very interesting." A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face, but he covered it quickly. As security led me out, I heard David resuming his speech, announcing my replacement, promising even greater innovations to come. I let them escort me to my office, calmly packed my personal items, and walked out of BioFuture's glass doors for the last time. In my car, I pulled out my phone and sent 2 pre-written emails. The first went to every major biotech journalist in Silicon Valley. The second went to BioFuture's board of directors. Both contained the same attachment, an invitation to Monday morning's patent office hearing. You see, while David was busy planning my downfall, I had been preparing for this moment for months. Every patent he thought BioFuture owned, every breakthrough he was about to claim credit for, had already been registered under my name through Martinez Biotech LLC. The provisional patents I'd filed months ago were about to become public record. But that wasn't even the best part. David had been so focused on stealing my cancer research patents that he hadn't noticed what I'd buried in the documentation. Proof that he had been selling company secrets to competitors for years. Sometimes the best place to hide evidence is in plain sight, wrapped in layers of technical language that only a true scientist would understand. As I drove home through the San Francisco night, I thought about Monday morning when David would walk into that board meeting confident in his victory, only to discover that he'd orchestrated his own downfall. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't about fighting back. It's about letting your enemies think they've won, right until the moment they realize they've lost everything. My phone buzzed with messages from colleagues, some expressing sympathy, others distancing themselves from me. I ignored them all except one, from Dr. Helen Chang, head of the FDA's Oncology Review Board. Just got the hearing notice. This should be interesting. I smiled, thinking about the stack of documents sitting in my home office safe. Documentation of every meeting, every stolen idea, every backdoor deal David had made. But more importantly, proof that the patents he thought he'd stolen were never BioFuture's to begin with. Tomorrow would be a quiet Sunday, a calm before the storm. I planned to spend it reviewing my presentation for the patent office one last time, making sure every detail was perfect. After all, when you're about to expose one of the biggest intellectual property thefts in biotech history, it's important to get the details right. As I pulled into my driveway, I thought about something my mother used to say. Success isn't just about being brilliant, Sarah. It's about being brilliant enough to protect your brilliance. Looking up at the stars, I whispered, "Watch this, Mom. You taught me well." Monday morning would change everything. But for now, I had a quiet night ahead of me. A bottle of expensive champagne I'd been saving for this moment, and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the best revenge is simply letting your enemies think they're smarter than you. Little did they know, the real story was just beginning. Monday morning dawned clear and bright in Silicon Valley. I arrived at the patent office at precisely 8:30 a.m., dressed in a crisp navy suit that I'd bought months ago for this exact moment. The hearing room was already filling up. Journalists, industry experts, and most importantly, BioFuture's entire board of directors. David sat at the front, looking confident but slightly confused by the turnout. "Ms. Martinez," Judge Patricia Rodriguez began, "You've called this hearing to address ownership disputes regarding patent applications filed by BioFuture Innovations. Please proceed." I stood feeling the weight of every eye in the room. "Thank you, Your Honor. I'm here to present evidence of intellectual property theft, corporate espionage, and fraudulent patent applications by BioFuture Innovations, specifically by Research Director David Chen." David's smirk faltered slightly as I opened my laptop. The large display screens around the room came to life, showing a timeline of patent applications. "As you can see," I continued, "every major breakthrough BioFuture claims to own was first filed under Martinez Biotech LLC, my private company, weeks or sometimes months before BioFuture's applications. I have notarized documentation of each discovery, along with video recordings of all lab work." The board members started whispering among themselves. David stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. Any work done while employed by BioFuture belongs to the company. It's in her contract." I smiled, waiting for this exact objection. "Actually, David, if you look at Section 7.3 of my employment agreement, which I helped draft, thanks to my late mother's legal training, you'll see that all intellectual property developed using my proprietary methodologies remains my personal property. BioFuture only has licensing rights which terminated upon my wrongful dismissal." The room erupted in murmurs as I projected the contract clause. David's face had gone pale. But I wasn't done yet. However, the patent dispute isn't the most interesting part. I clicked to the next slide. Hidden within the technical documentation of these patents is evidence of something far more concerning. Mr. Chen has been selling BioFuture's trade secrets to competitors for years. The screens filled with email exchanges, bank transfers, and meeting recordings, all carefully collected and preserved. Each patent application contains embedded watermarks and unique identifiers. When pieces of our research appeared in competitors' applications, these markers allowed me to trace the leaks directly back to Mr. Chen. David jumped to his feet. This is all fabricated. She's trying to destroy the company because she was fired. Judge Rodriguez peered over her glasses. Mr. Chen, please be seated. Ms. Martinez, please continue. For the next hour, I methodically laid out my case. The evidence was overwhelming, not just of David's theft of my work, but of his years of corporate espionage. With each new revelation, I could see the board members' expressions shifting from skepticism to shock to anger. Dr. Helen Chang from the FDA stood up. Your Honor, given these revelations, the FDA will need to review all of BioFuture's previous submissions. If Mr. Chen has been selling research data, there could be serious implications for patient safety. That was the moment David broke. You don't understand, he shouted. The shareholders wanted results. We were falling behind our competitors. I did what I had to do. By stealing my work and selling company secrets. I asked quietly, how many patients could have been helped if you'd focused on actual research instead of corporate espionage? The hearing lasted another 2 hours. By the end, Judge Rodriguez's ruling was clear. All patents in question belonged to Martinez Biotech LLC. BioFuture would need to pay damages for wrongful termination and patent infringement. And David was facing criminal charges. As the room cleared out, Barbara Chen, BioFuture's CEO and David's aunt, approached me. Her face was ashen. We had no idea, she said quietly. The board, we trusted him. I nodded sympathetically. I know, that's why I made sure to protect not just my work, but the company too. All the evidence of David's dealings with competitors is documented. BioFuture can prove it wasn't involved in his espionage. She studied me for a long moment. You could have just exposed your patent ownership. Why go through the trouble of documenting David's crimes too? Because it was never about revenge, I replied. It's about protecting the science. These treatments could help millions of people. They need to be developed correctly, ethically, with proper oversight. Barbara was quiet for a moment. We'd like to offer you a position. Chief Scientific Officer, complete autonomy over research, board seat included. I smiled but shook my head. Thank you, but I have other plans. Those plans became clear the next day when I announced the launch of Martinez Therapeutics, backed by several venture capital firms who had been at the hearing. Our first project, continuing the cancer treatment research, but this time with complete transparency and ethical oversight. The following months were a whirlwind. David pled guilty to corporate espionage charges. BioFuture underwent a major restructuring, with Barbara stepping down and a new management team taking over. And my company? We completed Phase A trials in record time, with results that exceeded even my optimistic projections. 1 year later, I stood on a different stage, accepting the Innovation in Biotech Award. Looking out at the audience, I saw many familiar faces from that fateful gala night. But this time, they weren't whispering about my downfall. They were applauding my success. After the ceremony, Dr. Chang approached me. You know what impresses me most, she said. Not the patents, not even exposing the espionage. It's how you turn this into something positive. Your transparency initiatives are changing how the whole industry operates. I thought about that night at the gala when David thought he was destroying my career. He never understood that true innovation isn't about taking credit. It's about creating something meaningful, something that helps people. These days, when I mentor young scientists, I tell them my mother's wisdom about protecting their brilliance. But I add my own lesson. Success isn't just about being smart enough to protect your work. It's about being wise enough to use it for the right reasons. Martinez Therapeutics is now at the forefront of genetic therapy research. Our cancer treatment protocols have shown promising results in Phase IA trials, and we're expanding into other areas of research. More importantly, we've established new standards for research transparency and ethical practices in the biotech industry. David, last I heard, he was serving his sentence and writing a book about corporate ethics. Ironic, given his history. Barbara retired to focus on philanthropy, funding scholarships for women in science. And BioFuture? They're one of our research partners now, under new management that understands the value of integrity in science. Sometimes late at night, working in my new office overlooking San Francisco Bay, I think about that gala night. David's smirk as he announced my termination. The whispers, the judgment. He thought he was writing the end of my story, but really he was just setting the stage for my greatest breakthrough. In the end, the best revenge wasn't about destroying David or BioFuture. It was about building something better from the ashes of their betrayal. Something that would help people, change lives, and maybe, just maybe, make my mother proud. As for me, I keep my mother's old patent law books in my office now, right next to my research awards. They remind me that success isn't just about what you create, it's about how well you protect it, and more importantly, how you use it to make the world a little better. And that gala dress, I had it framed. It hangs in my office as a reminder that sometimes the moment they think you're finished is actually just your beginning. The story made headlines in Silicon Valley. Wrongfully fired scientist becomes biotech pioneer. But for me, the real headline was much simpler. Cancer treatment trials show promising results. Because in the end, that's what really matters, not the revenge, not the vindication, but the lives we might help save. That's the thing about success in science. It's not about who gets the credit. It's about what you do with the knowledge you have. And sometimes the best way to prove your worth isn't by destroying your enemies. It's by succeeding so spectacularly that they're forced to acknowledge what they lost. As I write this from my office at Martinez Therapeutics, preparing for tomorrow's FDA review of our latest trial results, I can't help but smile. The view from here is much better than from my old office at BioFuture. Not just because of the bay windows or the prestigious address, but because this time I built it myself, on a foundation of truth and integrity. And that's worth more than any revenge could ever be.